Using terms like perpetrator and abuser are probably not the greatest way to try to speak to mothers who are being, or fathers who are being abused by their children, rather than saying things like the person who is causing you harm or the person who is doing the harm. Often it's also easier, I think, for older individuals to relate to language that kind of describes the tactics that might be used in an abusive relationship, like is somebody not allowing you to leave the house, is somebody taking your money without your permission, is, you know, someone making you feel, you know, not making you feel okay, or is somebody touching you in a way that makes you uncomfortable. So thinking about language that you can say that really kind of is discussing the tactics that an older individual might experience. Another thing, I look at a lot of outreach materials out there in the community, and what I find is so often when we're looking about getting information out about services to the older population, we're talking to people about reporting elder abuse. We're not talking to the elders themselves. We're talking to the rest of the community and saying, these people need protection. So I always encourage programs to really look at that, maybe think about, maybe you need to reach out to the elders themselves and say, we are here to help. I also think words like free and confidential make a big difference. You know, that, that this is a place I can call and nobody else is going to know. I can keep, you know, this private. When we're thinking about outreach, so who are we picturing on our brochures? And thinking about where we're putting this information, I think when we're thinking about marginalized communities, it's all about building relationships with those communities, and which means, you know, showing up and being there, not just dropping off brochures. And so they really recognize who's connected to that brochure.
When we talk about reaching this population, the number one hurdle we have to overcome is denial. And so reaching out, finding avenues to touch that older victim are really very, very challenging. The media doesn't help with that either. Like, for example, if I'm an older woman sitting at home watching television and there's a PSA on and it's about domestic violence and there's a black eye and it's a young woman and she's got a child tugging at her skirt, well, that's not me. And so she doesn't relate to that. Also, even the word domestic violence, you know, not always, but sometimes the abuse in a long-term abusive marriage isn't as physical as it once was. And so when they hear the word violence, they think of physical, which most of society does. Perhaps using different language like abuse versus violence would help. There are challenges in where to reach older individuals. When you're doing outreach, you have to do it as if there is a victim in the audience. And so when you're talking to them, keep talking about how it can be anybody. I often use that statistic, 1 in 4 women, and I make them, you know, look to the front, look to the back or whatever, so that once again, they're not being singled out. Some of the strategies we use to do outreach are retirement communities. We'll go out and we'll do presentations, perhaps provide a crocheting group so that we can get to know who the people are. I mean, if you're in a community of 55 and older, there's a great chance that there is abuse going on in that community and you want to reach out to them. We have a very high retirement community in Phoenix, and so we target faith-based communities out in the Sun Cities area because most of the participants are older women. We have great rec centers, and that's another area where we try to target and strategize. And all the obvious places, emergency rooms, clinics, geriatric doctors, really important to go and talk to them. I know it's probably been said many times, but you really need to get out of the office and get into the community and get to know who your community is.